Warriors are one of those classes that don't possess any supernatural abilities, they just don't have any magic or crazy superpowers on their side. Regardless, there are still some incredibly notable warriors out there that changed the history of the Warcraft universe forever. So let's take a look at the top 10 most powerful warriors in World of Warcraft. As there are titans like Sargeras that are barely even warriors, let's focus on the mortals closer to our characters in terms of power levels. So let's get into the list. Teleria trembles, and the only way to free it from the Dark Lord's grasp is to answer the summons of the Arbiter and raid Shadow Legends. At the moment, it is one of the most complex mobile games on the market, with 500 champions and countless ways to mix and build them, making no two champions the same. You can create teams and figure out endless strategies. I've been playing mainly with the glorious Orc Warrior Galek, upgrading him and getting him ready for the big boss fights. Haven't finished the campaign yet, but it is the best way to level up your champions, to grind out the XP, to build these teams, and to get loads of silver for later upgrades. It's been a crazy month for Raid as they add the champion fragments, the new bazaar, and extended daily login rewards up to 270 days, so it's literally never been a better time to start playing. Make sure to use my link in the description and you'll get 100k silver, 1 energy refill, 3 ancient shards, and this awesome champion, the Adjudicator. You'll find all the cool loot in the inbox only for the next 30 days. Check out Raid Shadow Legends. Number 10. Cairn Bloodhoof. Everyone that has played Warcraft has heard about Cairn Bloodhoof, the legendary High Chieftain of the Tauren. However, not many associate him with warriors, mainly due to his peaceful nature and generally calm demeanor. In reality, however, Cairn was gigantic, a lumbering figure, and one of the most dangerous warriors on all of Kalimdor. While we don't know too much about his past, it is almost certain that he had fought the Centaur specifically on many occasions, and those are incredibly dangerous beasts, and he definitely fought them throughout his very long life. Ultimately, he fell in the Mak'gora against Garrosh, one of the greatest warriors of the Horde at the time. He did have the upper hand for most of the duel and would have most likely won had there not been the poison inflicted by Maggot the Grim Totem. Very importantly, keep in mind Cairn was 107 years old, and as far as we know, Tauren don't live that much longer than humans, so the fact that at the age of 107 he was able to battle against a legendary Orc warrior in his prime says a lot about his strength. While not much is known, there is no doubt, especially in his youth, Cairn was one of the most dangerous warriors on all of Azeroth. Number 9. Blackhand. Blackhand the Destroyer is essentially what Blizzard had originally planned with the Orcs, just ruthless beasts of destruction. Despite his bad reputation, he really wasn't always as evil as he would later seem. Originally, he was just an overall dominating figure. Blackhand was a massive, muscular Orc that commanded the Blackrock clan through sheer brutality, force, and power. Few dared to challenge him, and many were afraid of him, which is exactly why he became the war chief of the newfound Horde in the first place. Prior to the Drana and the human conflicts, he had battled the ogres and won, and it was said that Blackhand could always turn the tide of battle and could always find the enemy's weakness. However, on Azeroth he didn't fare so well. He faced off the legendary Anduin Lothar and almost lost, and was ultimately killed by his second-in-command Orgrim Doomhammer, who had challenged him to a Mak'gora. Now, Blackhand was mostly notable for his role as a chieftain and the war chief, but he was also an excellent warrior and had earned his right to lead for the time through force, as was tradition with many Orcish clans. While he didn't fare that great in duels later on, keep in mind it was against what history would later know as some of the finest warriors in all of Warcraft. Number 8. Anduin Lothar. Anduin Lothar is like the Achilles of the Alliance. He was a legendary warrior, known by everyone, not just in terms of skill, but prestige as well. He is the descendant of the original Arathi line, the ancient humans, member of the King's Guard, and he fought trolls and was one of the first humans to clash with the invading orcs. During the first war, he became the King's Champion, the highest military rank, and was the leading figure in the Orc-Human War. His knights on missions shocked the orcs and impressed them, as they would wipe out entire orc raiding parties without a single casualty. Anduin himself killed Medivh as he had betrayed the Alliance, a rare feat as Guardians were incredibly powerful. On top of that, during a battle he had nearly slain Warchief Blackhand, and only his warlocks had saved him from his fate. During the Second War, he was named the Supreme Commander of the newfound alliance and was a key figure in the Orcish defeat. However, ultimately, he was defeated by Orgrim Doomhammer in single combat. Anduin Lothar's importance cannot be stated simply, as he is possibly the most important figure of the entire alliance. The fact that Anduin Vryn, the king, was named after him says a lot about that. Looking at his history, Anduin was really the best commander, a general, possibly the finest in all of Alliance history. Second to that, he was an incredibly skilled and powerful warrior, facing off against foes much larger, faster, and stronger. He did lose his life in battle ultimately, but keep in mind, he was a really old man at the time, nearing his 60s, and he did quite a good job of defeating orcs in their prime. Number 7. Garrosh Hellscream. The son of a legendary Grom and one of the most powerful Orcish warriors in recent times. Now, many might not consider Garrosh one of the strongest, but his fight accounts definitely say otherwise. As he was left behind on Draenor, he was one of the few uncorrupted Mag'har that we've recently discovered around the time of the Burning Crusade. From that point forth, Garrosh skyrocketed from a depressed random orc to the Warchief of the Horde and a key figure of 2 whole expansions. He held his ground against a very experienced troll in the first Mak'gora. He faced off against the Qualdir quite easily in Northrend. Then he defeated Cairn, not fairly, but he did win. Later on, you could observe his strength as he easily lifted orcs with a single hand and cut through Twilight's Hammer cultists like they were nothing. Furthermore, in Mists of Pandaria, he defeated Teran'zu. Not easily, but he did do it, and keep in mind, Teran'zu is like the strongest monk out there. Ultimately, he fought against Thrall once again and easily threw him around, just toyed with him, and was only defeated when the elementals had crushed him. Now, of course, you might say Thrall is a shaman, but Thrall is also an incredibly powerful warrior, as he used to be a gladiator and is quite large and is very experienced in combat. So, ultimately, Garrosh was really one of the most powerful warriors out there. Huge, strong, the son of Grom, the war chief, and despite being evil, overall, just a badass. Number 6. Orgrim Doomhammer. Orgrim is one of the most notable characters in the entirety of the Warcraft series and really the founding father of the modern Horde. Originally, he was just the son of Telkar, one of the finest warriors of the Blackrock clan, and ultimately he became the second in command to Blackhand in his new Horde. He played a role defeating everything from human armies to ogres to Draenei. Then, in his most notable act, he challenged the Warchief to a Mak'gora, defeating him and crushing his skull with a Doomhammer. As the Warchief, he had now conquered Stormwind. He also defeated most of the Shadow Council's warlocks and had subjugated Gul'dan and Cho'Gall. He had actually almost conquered the Alliance, but was ultimately betrayed by Gul'dan, losing the war. Nonetheless, he defeated the legendary Anduin Lothar in combat, shattering his sword and skull. Ultimately, Orgrim was captured, but escaped, and together with Thrall he had freed the Horde and led to the creation of what we have today. He died an unceremonious death, stabbed in the back by a Knight's Lance during a battle, but despite his fall, Orgrim Doomhammer is one of the most accomplished warriors in all of history. Number 5. Varrock Saurfang. When you think of a warrior, Saurfang comes to everyone's mind. This guy is one of the biggest badasses in all of Warcraft and one of the most accomplished warriors, not just of the Horde but of all time and of all races. Varrock was literally in every war that involved the Horde since their departure on Draenor, from the battles against the Draenei to the First and the Second War, to the Second War of the Shifting Sands, to the Northern Campaign, and essentially every other battle or skirmish that happened. He was everything from the second in command of the Warchief to a Supreme Commander. Keep in mind, he wasn't just in these wars, he wasn't just present, but he was also in some of the toughest battles out there, fighting in the thick of it. Also, through most of it, he has been pretty old. Thrall even passed him up for Warchief in favor of Garrosh due to his old age. This, of course, is a major thing, as was never really in his prime during his battles, and age is a really important factor for warriors, as their bread and butter is their body and skills. We've seen Saurfang fight literally everyone from humans to the Kiraji to demons to undead, and against dozens of opponents at the same time, and he had prevailed in all of these battles outside of a single one. He went into Amalgara against Sylvanas and lost, and even then he managed to get a cut in despite Sylvanas being just insanely overpowered. Ultimately, Varrock Saurfang died in battle, but behind he left a legacy that no one can really top, being a warrior unlike no other. Number 4. Varian Vryn. While most know Varian as the King of Stormwind and really the leader of the Alliance, he was in fact an insanely powerful warrior and one of the best on all of Azeroth. Varian grew up during the Orcish invasions and had to mature very early, and as he became king, times were just never easy for him. At one point he was kidnapped and forced to become a gladiator, and he had to free himself by fighting through everyone. We've seen Varian take down an elemental with his bare hands, cut down elite Orcish soldiers, demons, ogres, and all sorts of other monstrosities. He was actually blessed by the spirit of the ancient Golden and is one of the rare enhanced warriors, meaning that he had essentially unlimited stamina and had his senses heightened. Really, Varian was a human warrior with the power of a Vorgin. With his alter ego Logosh, it was said that fighting him was like fighting two people at once, and to put it simply, he was just a superhuman. Ultimately, Varian was defeated by Gul'dan as he had cut down many demons and jumped from the battleship, being ultimately almost completely dissolved by Gul'dan. As, of course, Gul'dan had more power than ever and was the last chance of the Legion, and Kil'jaeden just poured everything into him to take Azeroth as this was their last chance, it was no shame to lose to such a powerhouse. Overall, Varian Vryn will go down in history as one of the finest and the most powerful warriors in all of Azeroth. Number 3. Grom Hellscream. Much like Saurfang, Grommash is just a synonym for a warrior. Even before the war, Grom was one of the most fearsome warriors and the chieftain of the Warsong clan, one of the strongest Orcish clans on Draenor. First, he led raids into the Ogre lands, defeated many of them, and when captured and tortured, he survived, proving to be one of the strongest willed orcs of all time, an orc with an iron will. Grom was one of the first to take the Blood of Manroth, to fight the Draenei, to fight the humans, and one of the rare orcs that together with his clan was never actually put into internment camps and instead raided human lands and practiced guerrilla warfare, while at the same time battling remnants of the demonic curse. Later on, Grom, together with Orgrim and Troll, freed the Horde and ultimately sailed to Kalimdor. There, as he battled through endless foes, he ultimately once again drank the blood of Manroth and became a fell orc. This time, he managed to slay the demigod Cenarius, which in itself is a feat unimaginable by most mortals. After once again being freed from the demonic curse, he struck out at Manroth and actually defeated the Pit Lord, losing his life in the process. Keep in mind, this is an incredible achievement as Manroth was the strongest Pit Lord out there and only a few Demon Lords were ahead of him in terms of power. Overall, Grommash went down in history as one of the most accomplished orcs, most powerful warriors, defeating everything from ogres to humans to demons. Number 2. Broxigar. Broxigar the Red is the brother of Varrock Saurfang and possibly the most badass orc that ever lived. He was a veteran of the First, Second, and the Third War and had participated in some of the toughest battles out there. He is essentially the Leonidas of Warcraft, as during the Third War he held a vital mountain pass against armies of demons and was ultimately the only person to survive the encounter. He never forgave himself for the cowardice of surviving his comrades in battle and therefore searched for a glorious death himself. He suddenly traveled back in time to the War of the Ancients and played one of the most important roles in the conflict. Broxigar was given the Axe of Cenarius and the Night Elves were just blown away by his fighting skills. In the final battle over the Well of Eternity, Broxigar leapt through the portal, arrived on Argus and proceeded to just slaughter the demons left and right, that ultimately he stood atop a mountain of their corpses. He was so badass that this caught the attention of Sargeras himself, who decided to come over and to end his life. Broxigar, confident, leapt and wounded the leader of the Burning Legion. Now, it was a tiny wound, but ultimately this bought just enough time to destabilize the portal, ending Sargeras' venture. Broxigar was easily killed by Sargeras, but he went down in history, through alternate history, as one of the most glorious orcs that ever lived. I know I may get some flack for placing Broxigar second on this list, and I do believe it is high enough, and he really is the most powerful orc that ever lived, although the enhanced axe did play a role, and we don't know if other orcs like Grom or his brother Varrock might have just done the same thing if they had the chance. And lastly, number 1, Toronar. As far as we know, the most powerful warrior to have ever lived. Toronar was the king of the Eldrachi, an ancient warrior race of an unknown planet. Toronar himself was from a line of respected and distinguished fighters, and both he and his brother were one of the greatest of all time. Only the strongest within their society carried the warblades, and Toronar did everything to achieve that right. Aside from years of brutal training, he ultimately faced his own brother in a duel to the death and killed him without uttering a single word. Now, like the Eredar, who were one of the most intelligent races in the universe, the Eldrachi were a warrior race and one of the strongest. What they both had in common was that Sargeras sought them out due to their talents. Initially, they destroyed their planet and slaughtered them, but the Eldrachi held on, especially Toronar, slaying thousands of demons with the Legion observing that he was an army unto himself. Ultimately, however, before the final destruction, the offensive stopped, and Sargeras, either himself or an avatar, approached him. He offered them to join the Legion, but Toronar refused and engaged in a duel that lasted seemingly forever. Toronar was a decent match, but he realized that he could not best Sargeras and that he is being toyed around with, so he feigned submission. As Sargeras let his guard down and listened, Toronar struck with his warblades and ripped through his hide, drawing molten blood. Despite being only a minor injury, outside of later on Broxgar the Red, it was the only time Sargeras ever took damage. Toronar was subsequently destroyed, his entire race was just demolished and their entire homeworld. Outside of that information, we know next to nothing about Eldrachi, neither their appearance nor when they actually lived and what was their planet. Still, even with this very limited information, Toronar went down in history as the greatest and the most accomplished warrior of all time. Thank you for watching. Check out what the net is thrown into your desert by clicking on the screen, and check out Doran's Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.